Welcome back to the Gentleman's Gazette. Today's video is all about men's jewelry. We discuss what it is, how to wear it, and general do's and don'ts. So to start, what is men's jewelry? Throughout history in different cultures, what can and cannot be worn by men has varied and still varies greatly. For example, if you think of the maharajas in India or the French kings of the 18th century with their showy gems, it could be considered to be effeminate or over the top in this day and age. However, if anything, history has shown us that wearing jewelry as men is something very normal. By definition, jewelry is any accessory that is made in parts of metal or gemstones or semi-precious stones that serves as an ornamentation and doesn't necessarily have any practical value. So what are some typical pieces of men's jewelry? Well, let's start with cufflinks. And actually, they do serve a purpose, but just because they do doesn't mean they're not jewelry, because they are very decorative. When it comes to men's jewelry, apart from rings, cufflinks are probably the most widely worn item today. Most of them come in metals, usually they're less expensive. More precious metals include sterling silver, yellow gold, rose gold, white gold, or platinum. You can have a sterling silver cufflink that is heavily plated with platinum or gold that will never rub off and that you can pass on to your grandchildren. Sometimes cufflinks have decorative elements such as enamel or semi-precious stone inserts such as lapis lazuli or onyx, or they could have sapphires or rubies. Sometimes they're also made out of shell, such as mother of pearl, or maybe some jade. Of course, cufflinks require you to wear a shirt that is made for them, which is typically a French cuff or double cuff shirt that is folded over. For white tie, you can also have a single cuffed shirt that is also worn with cufflinks. In a more casual setting, you can sometimes find combination cuffs, which are button cuffs, but they also have two buttonholes, so they can be worn with cufflinks. To learn everything you need to know about cufflinks, please check out this in-depth guide here. Personally, I love to wear cufflinks, and when I wear a suit, I usually always wear cufflinks, and even with a sport coat. If you're interested, you can watch this video that gives you a glimpse into my cufflink collection. And if you're interested in high-quality cufflinks at a fair price, check out this link here. The second item of jewelry that is not as popular today anymore are shirt studs and waistcoat buttons. Traditionally, shirt studs were worn with formal outfits such as a black tie outfit or white tie, and they were just more decorative than the regular buttons you have sewn on dress shirts today. Often those shirt studs would match the cufflinks and you basically had a set. Now today, most people don't attend many black tie functions, and so it's really valuable to have a pair of cufflinks that can be worn independently of formal functions. Also, if you travel, you can just bring one set of shirt studs and cufflinks, and you can wear it with regular events, with business events, and for formal events. Because of that, I designed a set with monkey fist cufflinks that you can find here. You can buy them independently, you can wear them independently, but it's kind of the one set that works for all. If you want to learn more about shirt studs, please check out our black tie and white tie guides here. Traditionally, men would also wear removable matching waistcoat buttons. So you had shirt studs, cufflinks, and waistcoat buttons all in the same look. This was called a full dress set, and today you can't really find them new anymore, you have to buy those vintage. But if you go to all those lengths and dress up for black tie and white tie, you might as well go the extra mile, especially if you're into clothes and it's just a hobby and a passion for you, just like it is for me. Number 3 are watches. Again, it's functional, it tells you time, but ultimately today it's more of a jewelry piece for most men, especially if they invest a lot of money into it to show off certain complications or just a really cool look. Of course, one could argue if it has a leather strap, it's more of an accessory. If it has a metal band, it's more of a piece of jewelry. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. It's all about what you think and how you feel. As a funny side note, historically, it was impolite to have a watch with you because if you would look at it in company, you would imply that you had better things to do, which would have been considered to be rude. Then came the pocket watch, and today people wear their Rolex Submariner with their tuxedo outfits, even though it doesn't make sense from a formality point of view. If you want to learn more about the scale of formality in classic menswear, check out this video here. Perhaps the most obvious jewelry item a man can wear is a classic ring. The most common one being the wedding band or the wedding ring, but you can also have things like a pinky ring or a signet ring. If you're interested in the differences, we have videos for each one of them that you can check out here. So how many rings should you wear, and what's the specific meaning of a ring if you wear it on your thumb or your middle finger? Check out this video here. Personally, I like rings a lot, and I have quite the collection, and of course I made a video about it too. And typically I wear a wedding band and one other ring, be it a pinky ring or something on the ring finger on the opposite hand. The fifth men's jewelry items are tie bars or tie clips. Particularly men who don't just dress up because they have to, but because they want to, find it's just another thing they can add to make their outfit more special. Another more functional advantage of a tie bar is if you have one shoulder is lower than the other, like me, your tie will have a tendency to go in one direction, and a tie clip can keep it in place all day so it always looks neat. In my mind, tie clips are an elegant example of having a functional item that still serves an ornamental purpose. Sometimes you can even find vintage sets that have matching tie bars and cufflinks. Back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, you could also find tie tags, and sometimes they had chains that held your tie in place. If you wear it today, it gives you a certain vintage look, which is okay if that's what you're going for, but it's definitely not a modern aesthetic. If you go even further back, men wore tie stick pins, which was just a pin that would go through your tie, and no, it doesn't damage it, even though it leaves a little hole. Today, you can wear them with ascots, especially formal ones, and maybe even with a formal three-piece suit. I like the look of it because it's very subtle, but it's different. Prince Charles, for example, still wears them today, and particularly with morning wear ensembles. Of course, if you want to learn how to use a stick pin for a formal cravat, please check out this video here. And if you want to learn more about tie tags and tie clips and where to position them so you look the part, here is a video for you. The sixth piece of men's jewelry are collar pins, collar clips, or collar bars, and those had their heyday during the 1930s. At that time, a lot of men would wear them. Over the years, they almost completely lost their appeal to Main Street, and really only dandies or clothes horses would wear them to underline their unique style. Fortunately, in recent years, due to shows such as Boardwalk Empire, Mad Men, Peaky Blinders, or Perry Mason, more men have become aware of collar clips and collar pins, and as a consequence, you see more of them wearing them today. Again, they're typically worn by men who don't feel like they have to wear a uniform, but who see clothing as an expression of their personal style and they enjoy it. Traditionally, collar bars, clips, and pins were only worn with very narrow collars because you couldn't have that much of a spread. It would slightly elevate the tie knot, but today collars are typically a bit more spread, and so with a lot of customers ask us to make a wider collar clip, and so we listened and we did. To learn more about how to wear a collar clip or pin in your outfit without looking over the top, check out this video here. And to learn more about the history, we got you covered too. Number 7, chains and fobs. When the pocket watch was at its peak, men would of course also have a pocket watch chain that they would wear. Typically the vest had a little hole, or it was just pulled to a buttonhole and you would see it in the front. And a pocket watch was in your vest pocket. If you wear a watch chain today, it adds a distinctive vintage look to your appearance, and people typically only do it if they're really into clothes. Personally, I really like wearing a double Albert chain with a hole on a double-breasted vest because it has this symmetrical look, it has a little fob on it, and it's just very debonair in my mind. When it became historically okay to wear a timepiece with your evening wear and people weren't offended if you looked at it, first you had really flat, thin pocket watches. And those wouldn't be worn with a long watch chain, but with a simple fabric fob, or that was a bit decorative, in your vest waistcoat pocket. Today, style icons such as Lino Ieluzzi have popularized chains in menswear again. For example, he uses it with a money clip in his pocket, and then the other end of the chain being attached to a belt loop or a belt. So when he wears a jacket or a suit, it hangs out underneath and you can visually see it. Unlike with a pocket watch, This is definitely a more casual approach to wearing a chain, but it's nevertheless quite popular and modern, and it works well if you don't want to be too stiff in your overall appearance. Number 8 are bracelets, necklaces, or chains. If I look at my dad's generation, I could often see men wearing necklaces or bracelets, and I remember I used to wear one because my dad would, and so I got one, and I even got a silver bracelet on one of our Turkey vacations back in the day. In combination with a mullet, 5 rings on your fingers, and a strong tan, you can look like you're straight out of New Jersey from the 1980s. A more modern approach to bracelets are semi-precious stones such as tiger's eye or onyx or lapis lazuli. In my mind, they're a bit of a fad, and I'm sure they won't stay around, and they're not really part of the classic men's style realm. At the same time, a lot of younger people like to wear it, and it's more in line with a casual approach to style. Heavy link chains are typically of gold or in gold colors, and are sometimes bedazzled with diamonds. And they have become a status of wealth in society today. They're not something that is classically associated with permanent men's style. The 9th jewelry item are belt buckles. And most people will think of belt buckles as a very functional item and not an ornamentational item. But if you think about it, cowboys, for example, have sterling silver buckles with inlaid turquoise. Or you can spend thousands of dollars on Hermes age buckles in precious metals, for example, that are definitely more of a jewelry piece than a functional piece, even though they serve a functional use. Personally, I like to match the color of my belt buckle to the rest of my accessories, and to do that very effectively, I work with a belt system that allows me to change the style and color of my belt buckle very easily with all the belts I have in my collection, and you can learn more about it here. Last but not least, there are lapel pins or chains. Even though it's a quite rare sight to see those on men, they are around, and I've found that in recent years they've become more popular than maybe 20 years ago. It's either a pin that goes through the buttonhole of your lapel, or sometimes it's a chain that drapes from the buttonhole down into your pocket. Sometimes they're old pocket watch chains that just have been repurposed. Just like a boutonniere, a lapel pin can make you stand out a bit more because it's a bit more uncommon. But even politicians sometimes have little pins there that show their association to their country or their alma mater. So now that we covered traditional men's jewelry, what are the do's and don'ts? The first rule is to skip jewelry that has big branding on it or that's super ostentatious. Unless, of course, you want to impress others with your status symbols rather than your intellect, your humor, or your charm. Frankly, trying to impress others with their expensive Hermes belts or Rolex watches typically means that there's an insecurity that you have to overcome because you don't feel valued enough by others without them. Always keep in mind, jewelry catches the eye because it's typically made out of metal or reflective areas, and it is made to draw your attention to it. As a general rule of thumb, less is more, and if someone calls it bling, it's a good indicator that it's too much. So let's say you wear a white tie or a black tie, you don't have to wear that watch, and it was historically acceptable to do so. It also means that cufflinks for day wear are typically made out of just gold or silver without any bold diamonds that are sparkling and just showy. Of course, semi-precious stones are different because they're less showy, they just pick up a color maybe that's in your tie. That being said, at the end of the day, it's your style, and if you want to be bolder and wear bolder colors and more jewelry, go for it. Just be aware about how it could be perceived by others. Rule number 2, don't wear too many pieces of jewelry at the same time. Coco Chanel's advice to women was to always look in the mirror and then remove one accessory, and the same holds true for men. A common misconception is that more jewelry is more formal, but a little dose of minimalism can really help. So if you have one loud ring or signature cufflinks, keep the rest really toned down. For rings, most men are fine with a wedding band and then maybe one other ring on the opposite hand. If you look at pictures of Pitti Uomo, you see a bunch of guys wearing stacked bracelets and other accessories, which is a good way to show that too much is just not a good take, because it looks overloaded. 3. Don't wear huge, oversized jewelry. For men, that could be an extremely big gold watch or a ring that resembles that of an NFL championship ring. Usually big expensive rings or items of jewelry for men are really no different than a status symbol and the equivalent of wearing a really big engagement ring and holding it in a way that everyone can see how much money someone spent on you. It can easily come across as looking cheap or like a mobster or drug lord. Keep in mind, subtlety is the key to true elegance. Which brings us to point number 4. Do choose the right proportions for your jewelry. If you are a bigger person and you have bigger fingers, by all means, go with a ring that is more substantial. If you're a very thin guy, maybe a thinner band works, just like a thinner tie would, or a jacket with skinnier lapels. Or if you have thin wrists and are of a small build, well, a smaller watch is better than one with a larger diameter. 5. Do select jewelry that has a personal meaning to you. There is a reason why Pandora is so commercially successful, because they allow women to commemorate certain events in their life and make it part of their jewelry bracelet. Men can do the same with a watch, a signet ring, or a pair of cufflinks that can commemorate an important step in their life. It can be something they reward themselves for, or it can be tied to a relative, like your father or your uncle, who handed it down to you, or maybe there's an interesting history that really resonates with you that makes it very special to you and is above the materialistic value of the jewelry piece. I've even heard of people who've gotten heirloom jewelry pieces, maybe from the opposite sex, but they still wanted to wear it, so they melted it down and made it into a ring that they were happy to wear, and every time they wear it and look at it, they think of the person who gave them that ring. At the same time, be careful not to be too kitschy and maybe have political party affiliations made part of your jewelry. It will likely just alienate people, and it's the equivalent of wearing t-shirts with bold messages on them. 6. Do always try to match your metals. Now that may sound simple at first, but once you think about all the different metals in your outfits, it can be quite tricky. Now, if you don't happen to have a matching metal for everything, that's okay. Don't be self-conscious, just wear it. If you can make it all work together, consider it, and the overall result will be better. And no, if your wedding band is gold or silver, you should always leave it on and not try to take it off or mix and match other things, because again, it has a meaning, and that's more important than matching up the colors. Last but not least, rule number 7 is do make your jewelry choices based on the occasion. Now that's not just true in general for clothing, but particularly for jewelry. You wouldn't want to show up all bedazzled at a funeral, because that would draw the attention to you and your status symbols or shiny objects rather than to the deceased and their family. By the way, to learn more about funeral etiquette, check out this video here. Also, let's say you're going to a job interview. It's probably wise not to wear your most expensive Rolex watch. On the other hand, when you're negotiating a business deal and the other person wants to see that they're dealing with an accomplished business person, that Rolex may actually help you. So there's no cut and clear rule about what to wear. It all depends on the situation. In conclusion, we all have different styles, and someone can pull off wearing earrings, a number of bracelets and rings, and it just works with their overall style. But if you look at it from a lens of the classic permanent style, all the jewelry items and rules we've laid out here will serve you well. And keep in mind, when you're in doubt, always tone it down and go with less than more. That being said, in today's video, I'm wearing a combination consisting of a light blue shirt with French cuffs. I'm wearing a pair of contrasting purple glass cufflinks with gold metal elements, and I'm combining it with a striped tie. It's a vintage one from Brooks Brothers, and an olive green sport coat. My pocket square picks up the tones of greens and blues and yellows, and it's paisley from Fort Belvedere, and my ring is a wedding band in gold with a little mill grain pattern, and then I have a citrine gold ring. Again, I'm matching the colors of the metal, and it also ties in to the stripe in my tie. My slacks are also part of a suit, and they're solid navy blue with cuffs. I'm combining them with olive green shoes that pick up the color of the jacket. And to provide a visual, interesting element without being overboard, I'm combining it with a two-tone pair of socks from Fort Belvedere in a darker blue and kind of a Prussian blue, which provides a very interesting look depending on how the light shines on them without being too dramatic.